Welcome to Obsessions After Dark, where the morally gray are irresistible, the red flags wave proudly, and happily ever after comes with trigger warnings. We're your hosts, Lori
and Cassie, and each week we're diving into the darkest corners of romance, breaking down the books, the characters, the chaos, and everything that keeps you turning pages long past midnight.
Disclaimer, this podcast discusses fictional books intended for adult readers. We'll be discussing mature themes found in dark romance. Please take care of your mental health and always check your triggers before reading.
So, welcome. And today we are so excited to welcome Ariel Anderson on the show with us. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so happy to be here. I love coming on these podcasts and yapping about my books, so prepare for it to happen.
We love a good yap session, so you're in the right spot.
So if you've spent any time in the dark romance community, you've probably heard readers talking about Under Your Scars or Delilah, and we're so excited to have the person behind them here today with us.
Yeah, so I actually discovered you earlier this year when I read Under Your Scars. And I've said in a previous episode, I go into books blind, which may not have been the best thing for this book. And I've never read a book without an HEA, so I really had no idea what I was walking into. So when I got to the end, I was bawling. So much so that my husband ran in and was like, "Are you okay?" I had to try to explain. But I remember flipping to that last page where the thing happens. And I was like, what? Like, this can't be happening. This is not how stories go. But that book has stayed with me ever since. And then, of course, I had to read Delilah immediately after because I needed to know what happened with her. But it is one of my favorite books. And the thing I love about your books is that they don't just tell stories. They make readers feel like you're living alongside these characters.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people express similar things before. And for me, that's like very validating to hear because when I write, I really try to look at it from like a cinematic perspective. Like if you were watching a movie, what are the things you would notice were happening in the movie? So like maybe you don't notice what the room looks like, but you notice like the expression on the characters' faces. And that's kind of how I approach writing just in general, because like I really don't I have a bad habit of not focusing on setting or like what the characters are wearing or like any of that stuff, because like in my mind it's just not important. I would rather get to actually telling the character story than worry about like, oh, let me get them dressed in the morning and then write them. You know, that just doesn't work for me. So I actually that is very validating here. So thank you.
All right. Now, some readers may not know that you have actually published 7 books. So before we dive into those stories, we want everyone to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, not just Ariel, the author, but Ariel outside of writing. And who are you when you're not creating these emotional stories?
I mean, this is kind of a complicated question because I don't really know that there is an Ariel outside of writing. This is my full-time job, and like it's very like I tell people this all the time. Like before I was an author full-time, I worked a full-time job and did the author thing on the side. And when I quit my full-time job to become an author full-time, I was like I got so much whiplash because like I am working 7 days a week, sometimes 15 hours a day. Anytime I have a chance to pull out my laptop, I'm working. So when I don't really know that I really have much going on outside of that. I mean, I have a husband and we go on dates sometimes, but otherwise I'm a pretty boring person. And to that same effect, like when I read books like in my free time, I really try to avoid romance because it really just feels like more work to me. Not that I don't love romance, but it's just when you're writing all the time, it's like it kind of becomes a downer. So I guess in my free time, I like reading nonfiction books, like especially memoirs. I love like reading about the lived experiences of other people. I find that very interesting and a lot more entertaining for me as an author to read that than like go into romance. Unless it's a series that I already know and love, then I'll go back to it. But I really don't read a lot of romance, and I really don't have a lot going on outside of authoring. I know that's like a super boring answer, but I mean, it's the truth.
So do you think there's anything that readers would be surprised to learn about you?
I guess, I don't know that they'd be surprised, but kind of a fun icebreaker fact about me is way before I ever thought about publishing a book, I used to work in law enforcement. And one of my like side jobs in that field, I wasn't a cop, but one of my side jobs was I um, worked with the child exploitation unit, and I actually was used as jail bait for sting operations. So I actually like went out into the field and posed as a young girl to catch predators, and that was a really
Oh my
awesome
gosh.
time. And I have many a story about those experiences, but that's actually like, I don't know, that's something that like not a lot of people have done in their lives. So I always use that as an icebreaker.
Okay, that's a super cool icebreaker.
Yeah.
And I bet that felt really rewarding, knowing like what you were doing was putting so many people that deserved it behind bars.
Yeah, it was very rewarding and like personal in public ways. But you know, it's also a little bit scary because like, not to go off on a tangent, but like when you work in an office where people can come in and like request their records and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what if this is the person that like I took down?" Like it was kind of scary in that regard because I was like, what if somebody like does something to me because, you know, I was a part of this. So, you know, it came with its downsides, but it definitely the rewards outweighed that.
That's awesome, though.
Okay, so Ariel, what made you fall in love with storytelling then?
Storytelling is, you know, I never imagined that I was going to be an author, but back in my college days, I actually wrote fan fiction for the Marvel universe. That was like my thing that I did in college. And I amassed quite a following over there. I don't remember how many followers I had or like how popular my stuff was, but like I remember being like a popular fan fiction writer over in that space. So I guess it's like very weird to look back on that now to think about where I am because I stopped doing that after college and then I went back to it like right before Under Your Scars became a thing. And so it's just like weird, like how life takes you back to a very like significant portion of your life. Like who would have thought that this side project that I did in college would have like set the foundations for me to be where I am now? But I love storytelling because I like to hurt people. And I know that's like everyone's like, duh, of course we've read Under Your Scars, of course, but like in the sense of like I like for me personally, I don't really enjoy reading romance books that are always tied up with a beautiful little ribbon. Like I wouldn't say just unhappy endings, but I like endings that like do a little something to you that they stick with you. And I really like writing angst. So I think that's kind of like, I just want to share that with the world. And not that I'm trying to like change the, you know, romance space, even though I've been accused of that before. It's just like, I enjoy telling stories how I like to tell them and I like breaking hearts in the process. And so I guess in that respect, I love it because I've always been that way. I love writing angst, even for my fan fiction days. Those were always my most popular fan fictions, and they were the ones that I found the most rewarding and most fun to write. And so I guess that also kind of stuck with me.
So when you were in college or in writing your fan fiction, I am going to assume that it's safe to say you didn't think you'd be in the dark romance genre then.
I didn't even know dark romance was a thing. Honestly, I don't even think dark romance was a thing back then. Like, I don't think that was a thing. And I don't think I read a single like romance book until like maybe a year before I published Under Your Scars. Like I
Oh,
was,
wow.
I mean, I love romance now, but like it wasn't really like something that was a big part of my life until randomly I decided I wanted to write it one day. And that's just where it fit. And I guess that's just because from my fan fiction days, like you write characters in love. And so of course it's romance. Like, and that's another thing, again, to go off on a tangent here, when people are like, I can't believe you would write a book that doesn't have an HEA, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, but like, I'm not looking at it from like, I'm not looking at romance from the perspective of how can we get to the HEA. I'm looking at the romance of like, the fun part is reading about them falling in love. It's not about getting to the ending, at least in my opinion, and how I like to write. So that's how I prefer to write. And I mean, I'm not trying to change the industry or the genre, but I mean, I kind of march to the beat of my own drum and I'm going to write the stories that I want to write. And if that includes breaking your heart in the process, then I'm going to do it.
Well, it clearly worked. I mean, you're doing great with it.
Yeah, and I've really come to love stories without an HEA. Yours was the very first that I had read, and then just recently I read Wrecked by Brie Mina,
Mhm.
and both of yours and hers, I was bawling, absolutely bawling. But the thing I loved about them was that it was real. Not that, and obviously I love dark romance genre, period, but I loved the realness of those two books. Like, even in dark romance, life still happens. And I love that with Under Your Scars. It didn't wrap it up in a nice bow, but it wrapped it up how I felt like it was supposed to.
Yeah.
You did a great job on that.
Thank you. And I mean, that's kind of how, like, if you read the prologue and think that it was going to end any other way, like, honestly, I feel like that's kind of on you because it was foreshadowed from page 1 that this was not going to be that way. So, I mean, like, I don't knock anybody for going in blind, but, like, the clues were there. You just had to, I guess, not be in denial about them in a way. But it was, and I know that this question comes up all the time, and you guys might even ask it, but I mean, it was always meant to end that way, and it was always going to be that story. It was never going to be a happy ending, and even when people ask me, like, "Are you ever going to write a happy ending for this story?" I'm like, maybe like for fan service, but that's not the story that I wrote, and that's not the ending that these characters deserved. And it's an ending that wouldn't do them justice. I mean, yes, it would make
Mhm.
people happy because everybody loves a happily ever after, but for these characters in particular, that wasn't their journey, and the beauty of their journey was the everything that happened before the ending, you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah,
what may happen after the book ends.
right. Okay, so let's talk about those books then that made readers completely obsessed with your stories. So before we jump in, let me just give a quick heads up. Spoiler warning. Obviously, today we're going to be talking about Ariel's books. We're going to talk about them in depth, and some spoilers will be leaked. So if you haven't read them yet and want to go in blind, this is your chance to pause the episode, read the books, and then come back and join us. But let's start, Ariel, with the book that introduced so many readers to your writing, the Under Your Scars book. And for anyone who hasn't experienced it yet, can you give us an overview of the story and tell us what first inspired you to write that story?
I feel like giving an overview is like a trap because I feel like you can't really do it without like giving away everything. But the crux of the story is a man with dissociative identity disorder falls in love with a girl, and he happens to have an alter ego that is a serial killer, and that's kind of what spurs on the basically the main conflicts of the book, at least until Act 3, and there's history there between the two families. It's really I didn't necessarily write it this way, but I have seen it described this way, and I agree. It really is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, essentially. If
Mm,
Romeo were Batman, if he were a serial killer, that's kind of like the vibe that it ended up being. Although I didn't intentionally write it that way, but I mean, that is what ended up happening. And I think like a modern day Romeo and Juliet is like a very apt description of kind of what happens in the book without describing everything that happens in the book because there's a lot. And what first inspired me to write it is, I mean, again, I feel like I'm very open about this, but a lot of people don't know that Under Your Scars was originally a Batman fan fiction. And some people probably picked up on that.
really?
A lot of them get like the Gotham vibes from it. And I mean, obviously that's what it was based on, but it was originally a Batman fan fiction. Now, this is separated from when I was in college writing fan fiction. This came way after. So I wrote that fan fiction, and I was not popular in the fan fiction space at this time in my life. But me and my friend Shelby, who is also an author, she just recently published her first book. But we both decided, because she also had a Batman fan fiction, we both decided that we wanted to publish books together. Mine just happened to come first. So after we decided that, is when I started rewriting it to not be a Batman fan fiction and actually be an original story. And then shortly after I made that decision and started writing it, my father passed away. And so like the entire time I was rewriting that book, to be not a fan fiction. I was going through this like very intense grief and like the darkest part of my life. So that's where like the darkness came into it. So when I say like it wasn't intentional to be that way until it was, that's really what I mean, because it was really at the beginning a lot more of a vigilante, like feel good story. I mean, it still had a non-happy ending, but like it was a lot more hopeful in a lot of ways. So the darkness really came from just my mindset at the time. But if you're talking about first inspiration, it was Robert Pattinson's Batman.
Love that. And I would not have picked up on that it would have been a Batman fan fiction. I think you did really well with telling this story. So I didn't even pick up on that. But now in hindsight, as you say that, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I can see it now.
I feel like I tried to, it's called removing the serial numbers. But I mean, I really did try to turn it into its own thing. I mean, remnants are still there. They're going to be. That's just how it is, because that's how the original story was structured. But I mean, I really did try my best to make it its own thing and make it completely separate. But the inspiration is still there in certain parts. You can see it. If you're a Batman fan, you definitely can see it.
So when you first started writing the story, was there a certain feeling that you wanted readers to walk away with? And did that stay the same throughout the writing process, or did the heart of that evolve as the story went on?
Like I've said before, I just really enjoy writing angst, and wherever that angst ends up taking me is kind of just how it happens. I don't really write with a plan. I kind of describe my writing style or my writing process as I have one particular scene that I want to get to, whatever that scene is. I can't remember what it was from Under Your Scars, but I think it was like somewhere in the middle. Probably like, I don't even know. We'll just say like chapter 30-ish of Under Your Scars. Like right smack dab in the middle is probably where the scene came from. So I write the main scene I want to get to, and then I write the prologue and the epilogue. So I know where I'm starting, I know where I'm going, and I know where I want to get to. Like, for all intents and purposes, I'll say the climax of the book. I know what that's going to be, I know what the ending is, and I know what the beginning is. And so I write the story around those parts, and I write like scenes all over the place. I don't write in like from beginning to end. I kind of just write whatever scenes work for me. And so whatever happens kind of just happens. And again, I do really like writing angsty stories. That's just what I prefer. But I wouldn't say that I went into that story wanting anybody to feel a certain type of way about it. I just had a story that I wanted to tell and hoped people liked it enough to read it. I mean, I know, again, that's a boring answer, but like, that's really like, again, I never expected it to turn into what it did. Certainly not. Like, staying where it is now from where it came from is like absolutely insane. So to look back on it now and think that like something I wrote in my free time while I was grieving became such a huge impact in the romance space is just like absolutely wild.
Did you feel like as you were writing in that season of grieving, did you feel like it healed you in any way?
I would say, I don't know that it healed me, but it definitely helped me cope with like the darker parts of that depression. I would say that the healing came after I hit publish, which is an entirely separate story that I can get into a little bit later when we dive a little bit deeper. But I would say that it was more of a coping mechanism to write that. And then the healing kind of came afterward when I started seeing the reception to it.
So readers often describe this book as one that they'll never forget. Was there a moment when you were writing it where you realized, that the story might actually affect people more deeply than you had intended in the beginning?
I definitely, again, I've told this story a million times. Sometimes I feel like I repeat myself and people are going to be like, tell something different. But I have a notebook that I still have it in the room across from me. Right before I published Under Your Scars, I took this notebook and I wrote down things that I thought people would be upset about in the book, like things people would like, things that would make people angry. And one of the top ones, I think it was the very top thing I wrote, was the ending. And I knew it was a risk because I knew that people prefer happy endings. Even like reception to the fan fiction was like, I can't believe that was the ending. I mean, it was a little bit different because these were established characters. And so, it was a little bit different in that sense. But people were like, I can't believe you did that. And so when I went to like actually publish the book, the final version of the book, I did have a thought in my head that like the ending was going to make people angry, and it did. But I certainly didn't think that it was going to stick to people in a positive way. Like that was a huge surprise to me. I definitely knew it was going to be impactful, and I knew it was going to have strong reactions. And it did get a lot of negative reaction in the beginning, and I don't know if I've just separated myself from the negativity at this point in my career, or if it just has dissipated as it's gotten more popular, or people have changed their opinions maybe. But I never expected the reception to be like overwhelmingly positive to that ending. That was a huge shock for me.
Yeah, because it sounds like you were kind of more prepared for the negative. And
Yeah,
like, this is,
right.
they're going to be angry. This is just how it's going to be, but who cares? I'm going to write it the way that I want to write it.
Well, also at the same time, I was not expecting this. Like, this was like a side thing, and I never expected it to be any sort of significance in my life. It was like, oh, cool, I published a book, and now I move on with my life. It never was like meant to be something that stuck around for as long as it has, and it certainly never meant to be my life now. Like, that's my entire life is Under Your Scars, and so I just can't believe it. If I went back and told myself that this is where I'd be now, I don't think I would believe myself, because I was so sure that people were going to be angry, but at the same time, it's like, so what if they're angry? Like, that's good. If you got any sort of reaction that's that strong about the book, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reactions in any area are a good thing for publicity.
Has there been a message from readers or a review or an interaction that has stuck with you?
I wouldn't like, I don't want to like get into like individual reactions, but I've had so many people reach out to me either through DMs or emails or even in person, like at events, which I would never do because I'm way too much of a scaredy cat to approach somebody. But they tell me like very deeply personal and emotional stories about like traumas in their own life, and how Under Your Scars either helped them through it, which is insane because who am I to help you through something like that? Or like just like made them feel validated in the way that they reacted to certain things in their life. And so as a collective, like the fact that people feel such a strong connection to the book that they would tell a stranger a deeply personal story about themselves in that regard, that is like so special to me. And I if I see that message, I will absolutely respond. Like, I don't see everything, obviously, because I get so many all the time. But if I see a message, I will absolutely respond, because that takes a lot of guts to tell a stranger about something so personal, and to, I guess, give them accolades for like helping you through something. Like, that is like extremely special to me, and I take that very seriously, and I take it to heart every single time. Like, those messages, like, I have so many, and they like they mean the world to me. Like, every time I get one of those, especially if I'm having a bad day, it's just like completely changes my mood. Sometimes sometimes I won't tell the whole story because it's not my story to tell, but like sometimes I'll even like go over to my husband and be like, look, this person sent me this very beautiful message, and like, I just need to talk about it, because it makes me emotional sometimes. So, because I'm like, wow, I can't believe the impact that I've had on so many people because of words that I put together, in my room by myself, not thinking anything of it. And it's just like so crazy to look back on it now and think about how much of an impact it's had on people. And not only that, but like, especially because it's such a big part of my platform is suicide prevention awareness. People have started their own suicide awareness walks. They donate to charities on their own dime and on their own time privately because they feel so compelled. It's just like, it's so crazy to see that like it's actually making some sort of positive impact on the world around me, and not just like for me. And I always say like every page read is going to a cause bigger than me, because I donate a portion of my royalties every year to the AFSP. So I think it's just like, I think it's really special to have a book that obviously ended badly, but like affected people so strongly that I'm able to contribute to a cause that I care deeply about and personally affects me. I think that's very cool.
that's why we fight so hard for the dark romance genre, Lori and I both. You know, we are both trauma survivors, and this is something that has helped us heal so much. And whether it's right or wrong in anyone else's eyes, this is important to us, really, because of everything that's happened. And every dark romance book has helped us heal in one way or another. And that's why we will fight tooth and nail for this genre.
There's definitely a place for it. I mean, dark romance is definitely not for everybody, but I definitely think that there is a place and validity to it. And I definitely think that there can be healing and support found in fictional worlds. I absolutely believe in that. I mean, it happened to me because I was writing it. Like, I'm a firsthand example of that. And like, obviously, like, my husband is not a serial killer, and you know, I don't have the same life as the characters in my book, but like, to know that it has an actual real life effect, that's like something that cannot be discounted. And a positive effect, I should say, an actual real life positive effect. That's not something that anybody can take away from me or that book or the genre.
Yeah. And what about those that you see that get tattoos for the book? I plan on also getting a tattoo for the book just because it touched me in such a deep way that that's something that I wanted to do. What about people that you see like that? Is that crazy to you? Like,
That is
they have this thing.
absolutely insane. Like, somebody is getting something permanently on their body because of words I wrote. Like, that is so crazy to me. Like, I am shocked every time. And you know, it's weird because I feel like I'm the only person in the world at this point that doesn't have an Under Your Scars tattoo, because so many people have them. Even my mom has one and I don't have one. So it's like,
Oh.
I need to like get on it and, you know, get my tail to the tattoo shop, because like I mean, especially at this point, because it's such a huge part of my life. Like, I feel like I want that to be on me forever. And also, it's like also a good, I guess, icebreaker if you're out in public and somebody's like, "Oh, what does your tattoo mean?" And then I can go off under this whole spiel about it, and it's just like really cool. That is like so awesome to me, though. Like, I can't believe that people would get permanent ink on their bodies because of a book I wrote. That is so cool and crazy, and like such an honor, honestly, too, because like, who am I, and like, what is my book that affected you so deeply that you get a tattoo for it? Like, that is crazy in a good way, though.
Okay, so after living with a story that touched so many readers and seeing the impact that Under Your Scars had, you moved into writing Delilah. So when you stepped into that new story, did it feel like a completely new emotional journey for you as an author, or did you find yourself carrying pieces of what you had already learned and experienced with Under Your Scars over into Delilah?
So this is kind of a two-part answer, and the first part is actually like very, like, probably not what you would expect. So the first part is that Delilah was specifically written because when people finished Under Your Scars, I never intended to write Delilah, by the way. That came
Okay.
it came like, I think like 6 months after I wrote the book. But the reason I wrote it is because there were so many people that thought that Caroline was going to be a Silencer 2.0. And I was like, no, I need to fix this right now, because that is not the journey. That is not her journey. That's not the character I created. And I don't know where you guys are getting this information from, but I'm going to fix it, because like, that's just not who she is. And I would never in a million years think that that was how people were going to interpret her character. But I don't know if that was maybe just wishful thinking to get like a second book on their part, but it just wasn't, that wasn't her journey, and I wasn't going to let people, you know, think otherwise. And so that's really why I wrote that book. But as I was writing that book, I was kind of, I don't know, I guess, ready to move on into a new part of my life after grief. And I felt like I owed it to myself to really like literally and figuratively close that chapter of my life. And so, surprisingly, when I was writing Delilah, I actually found myself getting very, very emotional for her, the character, or the character Caroline, because it was like, I felt like I saw a lot of myself in her, even if it was unintentional and I didn't start out writing it for that reason. And so when I finally finished and published it, like, I really just felt like I had taken a big, deep breath of air, let it out, and just like kind of moved on with my life from that portion of my depression that I was living in. And so I guess in a weird roundabout way, it did kind of like help me move on, but it wasn't like intentional in that way.
Well, that makes sense because throughout that whole book, it's about the aftermath of what grief is. You know, she's going through that grief journey, and you at that same time going through that grief journey. So that makes sense to me how you would kind of connect yourself as that character, and even more so than the first one, heal through that book in a way.
Yeah, I feel like especially the prologue chapter of that, I feel like it was like my emotions like coming onto the page like for the final time. Like I feel like that was my like goodbye to that part of my life. Like I'm letting the last bit out and it's time to move on. It's time to learn to like compartmentalize and like put this grief in a box like to the side and like start a new chapter of my life or a new book, a new edition of my life. So a lot of book metaphors were happening at the time, but I just feel like it definitely was like a a stepping off point for the rest of like my personal life.
One thing readers really connect with your books is the characters and how they feel incredibly real. They have wounds, fears, flaws, and emotions that readers can see themselves in. What about those complicated, messy human characters that draws you in as a writer?
Specifically, I really love it when I'm reading a book and the characters mess up and make messy mistakes that like I guess kind of harm other people around them, like maybe not intentionally, but to the point that they sound real. It's like when you're in a high stress situation, are you always going to make the most logical, reasonable choice? Probably not. That's like the nature of being human is you're not always going to make perfect choices. And I think that's something that's kind of very frustrating about an author when you see people saying like, "Oh, well, this character is stupid because why did she make that decision?" And it's like, well, this character was in a very high stress situation and based on everything that she knew about what was going on, of course she's going to maybe make a poor choice. And something you have to remember is especially when it's a dual point of view book, is just because you, the reader, know information because you witnessed it from both sides doesn't mean that the character knows that same information because they haven't seen it from both sides like you have. And so, like, I really enjoy writing, like, I guess to put it in a very simple word, like dumb decisions. I like when characters make bad decisions because I feel like that not only like makes them more complex as a person and a character, but it also like makes again like it makes the world feel a little bit more real because I know that I have not always made the perfect decisions every time. I make mistake every single day of my life and you know, that's like par for the course of being a human being. And so I think that that's just like when I'm writing a character and they're in a situation where they need to make a choice that could potentially have an impact on another person, I really try to put myself in that character's shoes and be like, knowing what that character knows in this setting that's happening, whatever their stressors are, whatever their circumstances are, what is makes the most sense for the character, what choice is the character going to make? Not what choice would the reader make, not what choice would the author make, not what choice would anybody else would make, but what would that character do? And that's like very difficult sometimes to like accept that that's the choice you have to make as the author because that's the choice that the character would make. And sometimes like it's not always a good choice and sometimes it can be very frustrating. And a prime example I have of this, and I know we're not talking about this book, but The End Unseen, that book of mine, the main character in that book makes dozens of really poor decisions because he is a spineless leader. And that's like, I see a lot of people being like, oh, he was so frustrating. Why didn't he just do things to fix what was going on in that world? And it's like, because that's not who his character was. His character wasn't there. He wasn't trying to fix everything. He was scared of being seen as a tyrant. And so he was basically frozen and not willing to do anything because he didn't want people to see him as that. And those kinds of like feelings and internal conflicts are what really drive a character to do certain things. And even if it pisses off the reader or pisses off me as the author, sometimes it's just got to happen. And I feel like that makes it very, very real, in my opinion. And I enjoy writing characters that mess up because it gives me more ways to develop them as a character and either help or hurt their relationship with other characters in the book.
Do you find that hard when you're writing, where what makes sense to you as the author is not what the character would do? Do you find yourself kind of struggling with that or arguing with the character in a sense, or do you just kind of let the character lead when you write?
I definitely let the character lead, but I'm still back there like, come on, like you can make a better choice than that. It's almost like, it's kind of like, and this is a very obscure, nerdy reference, but like when you're playing a video game and there's a choice, like me as a person, I find it very difficult to make the bad choice because I'm like, I don't want to hurt this character's feelings, but it's like, does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? No, but it affects the world around it. So it's a choice I either have to make or I don't have to make. But what would the character that I'm playing, what would their choice be for whenever game that I'm playing? I know that's like a very obscure reference, but it's just like sometimes you have to let the characters lead you the direction that they're going to lead you. And I know that's like a weird thing to say, like the characters lead, because obviously I created the character, but like once they make their way onto the page, they really do become their own person and their own entity. And sometimes you just got to let them take the reins and do what they do. And if it doesn't work, then you can go fix it later. But in that moment, that's what needed to happen.
I don't think that's an odd thing at all. I hear a lot of authors. I watched one interview with Sarah J. Maas, and that's how she said her characters are. Like, they kind of take the lead. And like you said, it can sound weird because you're the author, but because they take on their own little world in this book, they kind of lead the story.
Well, if every character that I wrote made the decisions that I would have made in that situation, they'd be very boring books. I'll just say that.
And of course, Ariel's world goes far beyond just Under Your Scars and Delilah. You've actually published 7 books. So we want to talk about the rest of your universe. So for readers who discovered you through those 2 books, how would you describe your other stories? And is there any common threads between them?
So I actually don't consider myself a dark romance author. I don't consider myself a fantasy author, although a lot of books that I have written are fantasy, and my most popular book is a dark romance. But I kind of just write the stories that I want to write. I don't stick to any particular genre. All of my books are very different, and I prefer writing standalones. That's just how I like to write. So most of my books are standalones, or if they have a second book, it's, it's very like, it's either 2 books or it's nothing, or it's just 1 book. But I think that you'll notice in some of my books that my writing style is different. You'll notice that you can probably tell that I wasn't really feeling it the way, and prime example is King of the Damned and Queen of the Wicked. 2 of my most hated books for me personally as the author. I hate those books. I wish I had never written them. But there's something beautiful in like experimenting and having it go wrong, because I take great pride in like knowing my successes and my failures came from my own brain. And just because something doesn't work doesn't mean that I'm a bad writer or like that my career is going to fall apart. Like sometimes things just don't work. And I learned the hard way that vampire fantasy, not the genre for me, but I still do enjoy writing many other books. And like I said, all of my books are very different. I have Venus, which is a contemporary rom-com that's basically all smut, no plot, or like very little plot. And then I have a lot of fantasy books, and my personal favorite book that I've written is Entombed, which is a Swan Lake retelling with a dragon. And so all of my books are very different, and I like to say that like eventually I want to have a catalog that there's something in there for everybody. So like maybe you don't like reading dark romance, but you really like reading, I don't know, fantasy romance. And so I have different things to choose from, and I try not to like box myself into any one particular genre or writing style, because I've experimented with first person and third person just to see what I prefer. I definitely think I'm stronger in third person, but the collective readership prefers first person, so that's another consideration I have to make and say, well, would this book better be served to tell it from third person, or would I rather, make the readers happy and tell it from first person because they want firsthand experience with the characters? So those are all things and considerations that I have, but I'm really enjoying just experimenting, and it's really nice to be so early on in my career and have experimented so much so that I know what works and what doesn't. And that's like I've said multiple times that I really enjoy writing angst, and I found that out by experimenting with other books. That I really enjoy writing angst, and I know that I struggle with third acts. I've discovered that through writing other books. And so there's always something to be learned from me as the author by writing books, even if they're not as, great selling as Under Your Scars. Gosh, I don't think any of my books will ever be as good of selling as Under Your Scars. But I just really enjoy telling stories, and, whatever story that happens to be at the time, I love them all for their own reasons, except for King of the Damned and Queen of the Wicked. Like, pretend those books don't even exist, to be honest. But my other books, they're pretty okay. But if you're going into the rest of my catalog thinking that you're going to get Under Your Scars, you're probably going to be disappointed, because Under Your Scars is its own thing. And I wrote that at a very difficult part of my life, and I'm not that person anymore. And so my other books are not going to have that same vibe, and that's okay. And, I'm not digging on anyone in particular, but, you don't have to read the rest of my books if you don't want to. If you just want to pretend Under Your Scars is the only thing I've ever written and not worry about my other books, that's totally fine with me. It's just, everybody has what they like, and I'm still trying to figure out which genre perfectly fits me. I mean, I know a lot of people have requested me to write another dark romance, and I'm working on it, but it's not going to be like Under Your Scars. And I guess that's just like par for the course, is like everything I ever write is going to be compared to Under Your Scars, just like every dark romance author is going to be compared to Haunting Adeline, and every fantasy author is going to be compared to ACOTAR. That's just like, it is what it is. But I really would like, I guess if I could tell people anything, just don't go into my other books thinking you're going to get Under Your Scars level of depth or emotion or anything like that, because those books are really a lot of experimentation with my writing style and like what I like to write. So, Under Your Scars is an anomaly. It's not the norm.
So, out of all of your books, is there one character that you have a really special connection with?
I feel like, and I mentioned this earlier, with Entombed, which is my favorite book that I've written, the dragon one, I feel very connected to, I guess, both of the main characters in that book, Elwyn and Midas, because they're both outcasts in their own respect. And I feel like when I was growing up, like, I felt very much that way. I feel like we can all kind of relate to like having a moment in our lives where we feel like we don't belong in a certain space, or, maybe that's with family or friends or school or work or whatever it is. I feel like in that sense, they're very relatable. And so that's why I have a special connection with them. I don't necessarily feel like I can relate to any of my other characters as much as I can relate to them. And also like the fairy tale campfire story-esque vibe of that book is just like very cozy. Like I could picture myself like being in that setting. And we were talking earlier about, reacting the way the characters would. Like I feel like the decisions that Alwyn made, she was maybe a little bit braver than me, but like later on in the book, I feel like I could absolutely relate to feeling the way she felt and reacting the way that she did to certain situations. So in that respect, I feel like I just relate to them in the sense that like they were outcasts, but then they found their way and they found their person and they found a place where they belong.
I love that. So, if someone has finished Under Your Scars and Delilah and says, I need more Ariel Anderson, which one would you tell them to pick up next? I know you said don't go thinking that you're going to get Under Your Scars, but which one would you say pick up this one next?
I think if you want something to help you kind of recover from Under Your Scars, I would definitely pick up Venus next, because it's a contemporary rom-com. It's funny. It's very lighthearted. There's like one scene in there that's like very emotional, but it does have a happily ever after. And, who doesn't love a firefighter, a hot firefighter? And it does have a reference to Under Your Scars in it. So definitely read Venus after you read Under Your Scars if both of them are on your TBR. But I think like just for you need a laugh and you need something that's like not going to hit you in the gut emotionally, at least until the very end. I think you should pick up that one. Now, if you're more of a fantasy reader, then I would suggest Entombed, because that's my personal favorite. And I feel like it has a lot of rereadability. And I've said this before, not with you guys, but to people in my life, I don't reread my books because like I find it very weird and like almost like I cringe at myself and it's like very awkward for me. But I have reread Entombed so many times because it's just like so cozy of a story. I love rereading it. I just feel like if I want to read something, it's like, man, this book is like, I just like, it's sad, but like in a comforting way. Like, I don't really know how to explain it without like giving it away, but it has a very like campfire story legend feel to it. And I think that's why it's so easy to reread. But I guess it depends on if you need a recovery from under your scars, then read Venus. And if you want to hurt some more, then read Entombed.
So, Ariel, you mentioned that Venus has something from under your scars, some type of connection. Do you feel like eventually you'll have like a universe type thing of some of these connecting, or are you kind of keeping them, like you said, standalone only?
I mean, they're all kind of their own thing. Venus is set in the same world as Under Your Scars, but they're not like connected in the sense of like it's happening down the street. It's more of a like, you know, to without giving anything away, like the characters in Venus are watching something happen on the news, and that something is also happening in Under Your Scars. So that's the kind of connection, but it's not like intertwined or anything. It's basically just a reference or like an Easter egg kind of a thing. Now,
Okay.
as far as the universe goes, my friend Shelby, who I mentioned earlier, she just wrote her book called Middle of the Night. And her book, Middle of the Night, and Under Your Scars are in the same interconnected universe. Like her main character knows my main character. And not to
Oh,
like give too much away, but me and her are planning on writing not a full length novel, but it's kind of like a slice of life, kind of like to give some backstory to her character and my character knowing each other, because obviously my book came for way before hers did. So we're trying to like strengthen that connection a little bit. So it's a little bit silly. And the premise is like they're both vigilantes, but they're like they have suspicions, but they don't really know for sure. And that's not a secret. Like that's very obvious in her book. That's not like I'm not giving any spoilers. She's very upfront about the fact that they're the same person. But um, I think that that's like it's going to be like kind of a fun going back to Under Your Scars without revisiting the hurt. Like it's just focusing on Christian and like his billionaire life. So I think that will be really fun. So as far as like universe goes, it is a universe, but it's like they're all their own stories. Like I'm never going to rewrite. Like I'm not going to rewrite something in the Under Your Scars universe. They just happen to exist in the same world, if that makes sense.
yeah. So, for readers who want to pick that up, you said it's Middle of the Night and it's by Shelby
Shelby Lewis.
Lewis. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So we can kind of revisit that world a little bit.
Yeah, hers is it's a lot more like actiony than mine. It's not as dark either. She says it's like a light dark romance, and I guess like if you've never read a dark romance before and you just want to like dip your toes in but you're scared, then like you could go for that. So it's a very different vibe. But it's very action packed, so if you like books with a lot of action, absolutely go for it. It just came out on audiobook as well. So that'll be fun.
Awesome.
I think it's narrated by Dana Green and Michael Gallagher, I think, are the narrators for that one. So if you prefer audiobook, you can listen to it that way. But yeah, there's like a few like Under Your Scars references in that book.
We can't have Ariel Anderson on Obsessions After Dark without talking about one of the things dark romance readers love the most, the chemistry and the spice. So Ariel, when you're writing romantic or spicy moments, what scene is most memorable to you?
Well, as far as spice goes, I wouldn't really say that they're all at all memorable to me because I don't really like writing spice all that much. And I know that's like so weird because a lot of people, when I say that, they're like, but the spice is the best part. Like, we love the way that you write spice. And it's like, that's cool. But like, for me, it is so like, not that I don't like it. I'm not trying to say that. I just mean that it's difficult for me to write because I would just rather write like more emotional scenes than spicy scenes. And it's really funny. And I wish my husband was here because he could validate this claim that I'm about to make. But when I was writing Venus, which is all spice pretty much, I wrote all of the spice scenes like 2 days before arcs went out because I don't like writing spice. I just like put it in there, and that was he was proofreading the book for me, and he saw my little notes like add spice here, and he came in here laughing at me because he was like, "Are you like this is going out like in a couple days? Like, are you gonna write it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get to it. I just don't want to do it right now. I just don't like writing." Spice is just like not my favorite thing to write, and actually I feel like that's pretty obvious because a lot of my other books don't have spice in them really at all, except for Venus. I mean, they have like intimate moments, but they're like not explicit smut like in Under Your Scars. But if I had to pick a spicy scene that is my personal favorite, it's probably the zip tie scene from Under Your Scars. Like I feel like I don't know, for some reason that's just like very hot to me. And also, like, it's a very important part of the book, so maybe that, like, contributes to it.
So being somebody that doesn't really enjoy writing spice, how do you balance that physical side of intimacy with the emotional depth of a relationship when you're writing? Do you typically kind of wait till the end, like you said, with insert here, this is where spice scenes go? Or how do you balance that?
I guess it really depends on how the characters are playing out. Like, for example, like the reason that there's so much spice in Under Your Scars is because it's meant to show that Christian is very intense in all aspects of his life. The reason that there's a lot of smut in Venus is because they're two people that didn't really want the same things like long term, but they were having a lot of fun, and so it made sense for those characters. But like a book or like a story like Entombed, the characters are two different species, so how is that going to work? And they kind of had to figure it out later on. And like the end unseen, both of the characters were virgins, and they had a lot of other stuff going on, so that wasn't really at the forefront of their mind. So I say all that to say it really kind of depends on the characters and how they play out. But like with Rowan in Queen of the Wicked, Part 2 of King of the Damned, he's an incubus, and that's like his whole thing is he gets his strength from having sex, and like that's his whole shtick is he wants to have sex all the time. And Caius the vampire, his saliva is an aphrodisiac, and so when he drinks the blood of a human, they feel that desire for whoever is drinking their blood. And it's just like, so it really depends on the setting of the book and the characters, because you can do a lot with emotional intimacy, but there are only so many ways to write smut, at least for me, because I don't delve into like more like kinky stuff. I'm like, I feel like my spice scenes are like pretty vanilla in comparison to a lot of authors. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just for me, that's just how I prefer to write. And so like there's only so many ways I can write, you know, intercourse, vanilla intercourse and missionary position. Like I'd rather focus on personal intimacy than like trying to figure out how I'm going to say cock for the 50th time. You know what I mean?
I love that.
So your books have characters with complicated histories and a lot of emotional baggage. How important is the buildup, the trust, the tension, and the vulnerability before those more intimate moments do happen?
I think it's very important for certain stories. Like again, I have to compare, like have to keep comparing them. But like Venus, like the sex was the forefront of the story because again, they weren't expecting the same things. One of them wanted a long-term relationship, and one of them just wanted to have a good time. And so the sex was at the forefront of the relationship because that was the only place that they could meet in the middle. But for things like Under Your Scars, that emotional intimacy really needed to happen in the beginning, and you needed to see Christian's obsession with Elena before you got to the first spice scene. And then as their relationship developed, especially in that first part 1 of the book, they were banging all the time because that was just like the relationship was new and that his love was so intense. And then obviously in part 2 it slowed down, and then in part 3 they had like more, I would say, intense scenes where she was like more accepting of him as a whole with the silencer. So in that sense, the emotional intimacy was very important because without it, it just would have been a bunch of sex scenes that didn't really contribute to the plot. But, sometimes people say, well, Under Your Scars had too much smut and it didn't make sense. And I completely disagree. I think almost all of those smut scenes had a very important impact on the plot and the relationship development of those two characters. And then, like, in Entombed, that again, they were two different species, and one of the main things about dragon society in that book is that they greatly, greatly respect the female dragons, female members of their society, very matriarchal society. And so he was like, when I mate with somebody, that is like, it's not just for like making babies. Like, this is a very important ritual and it's like very sacred to us. And then Element obviously didn't know because she was just, a human peasant in this world that hated her for loving a dragon. And so it just really depends on the story itself. But I much prefer writing the emotional intimacy than the physical intimacy. And again, you can do so much. Like, I feel like the tension leading up to the spice is sometimes a lot hotter than the actual spice itself. Especially if you have two characters that are like very good at banter with each other, you can really do a lot with that kind of leading up to the smut, and that's how I prefer to write. I prefer writing like foreplay than I do smut, if that makes sense. But like emotional foreplay.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, Cassie and I, but I think that there's so many misconceptions about dark romance and spice, and that, the idea is just it's all smut and it's basically literary porn. And in most there is erotica, and as literary stuff goes, but in most dark romance literature, the undergirding of spice is purposeful. It's not there just to kind of have shock value. It's not there just to throw in. There's a purpose for it, like you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's a place for everything. I'm a firm believer that in all literature, there's a place for everything. Well, most things, I would say. Like, there's illegal stuff, like maybe not then, but like as far as sex goes, if we're talking just about sex, there's definitely a place for everything. And it's like, we're all adults here. Like, sex is a part of life. Like, I, it just is. Like, it's not something that we need to be afraid of. And if you don't want to embrace it in literature, you don't have to. There are plenty of spice-free books, and I'm not going to use the word clean romance because I don't like the implication of that. But there's plenty of books that don't have any spice in them that are probably really amazing books. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but you know what I'm saying. Like, there's a place for everything, and like if you don't want to embrace it in your literature, you don't have to. And if dark romance doesn't do it for you, then there are plenty of other books out there that can do it for you. And maybe somebody is just like me and prefers the tension leading up to the spice, and that is what gets them going. And there are plenty of books like that too. So I absolutely agree that there is a place, especially in dark romance. And I think also dark romance, and people have said this before, but it's a way to kind of like discover things that you maybe wouldn't have known that you were into or wanted to try maybe in real life with your partner. And so those are like safe places and ways for you to explore that kind of stuff, even if it doesn't end up being something that you like in real life. Like, you can still be like, oh, that's interesting. I never considered it that way. Like, and honestly, like, I don't know, this is gonna maybe sound weird, but like, you could potentially like really spice up your intimate life in real life if you play it the right way and read the right books that actually do something for you. I mean, you could strengthen your real life relationship through that. And I feel like a lot of like arguments against smut in books is like, oh, it's ruining like real life relationships. Like, your man could never measure up. But it's like, that's not necessarily true. I mean, not to get all deeply personal, but my man and I are just fine, and I write it for a living. So, you know what I mean? Like, there's, I feel like the people who do that have like cherry picked erotica and made that their whole argument. And it's like, again, you said erotica definitely has its own place, and that's its own thing. Like, we're not talking about erotica here. We're talking about full-fledged out stories with smut in them. And a lot of times, like you said, that smut has a place in the story that's very important. Yeah, especially even for just like relationship development, because again, we're all adults here and we have sex. Like, that is a normal part of human adult relationships. And not to sound like, and I'm not dogging on anybody, but most of us do have sex before we're married, and that's just the way life is. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with reading about it, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with exploring those things in fiction, because again, it's a very safe place for you to either cope or learn new things about yourself, or just even decide that you don't like something. If you read something and you're like, man, I'm really not into that, and so you don't have to read another book like that.
Yeah, nobody's forcing you to continue to read. I think in general, dark romance and the smut in it, it really gets looked down on. And in reality, like you're saying, it's a lot of normal adult relationships, and it's probably maybe 2 or 3% of the book. You have the whole thing that is a massive amount of plot, and you have these adult characters who are real and they go through things, and there may be sex and intimacy, but that's such a small part of the book.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I mean, even if you look at Under Your Scars, I mean, there are plenty of smut scenes in Under Your Scars, but there is so much plot happening that, like, honestly, I mean, they're important for the plot, but if you skipped them, like, you would miss out on certain relationship development. So it's not always just like they bang and then it's done. Like, sometimes those scenes have a lot of very important plot development happening, or emotional intimacy development happening in them. And so you
Mhm.
can't discount them. And sometimes that's a very effective way of getting love across between two characters.
So you've taken readers on some incredible emotional journeys already, but we know the story doesn't stop here. So we have to ask, what is next for you? I know you talked a little bit about the book with your friend, but is there anything else you can tell us that you're working on?
Yeah, so I mean, I work on so many books at a time. I mean, I think right now I have like 20 works in progress or something like that. Now they're all at different
Oh,
stages of
wow.
development, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not gonna publish 20 books tomorrow or anything like that, but the 2 that I'm currently working on, one is called Blue Spring and one is called The Taming of Lazarus. The Taming of Lazarus is a mafia dark romance with a happy ending, so people can look forward to that. I've already kind of teased that on my Instagram, and I thought it was gonna come at the end of this year, but just, life happened. I got in a car accident and I couldn't write for a while, so that really set me behind. And then Blue Spring is kind of like what's really at the forefront of my mind. Like, it was The Taming of Lazarus, now it's Blue Spring. And I don't really even know how to classify Blue Spring, but it's kind of, well, I'll just tell you the concept of Blue Spring, it's a Japanese concept of like coming of age and like first love and like discovering who you are as a person. And so that's kind of like the core themes of the book itself, where there's like this society of people that have psychic powers. And so you have this all going on while one of the characters is trying to hold on to his high school sweetheart relationship, and she is not a part of that society. And the 2 main male characters, they're best friends, and their ideologies, not like political ideologies, but like in the world that they're in, their psychic ideologies kind of tear them apart. And then like the whole book is about like neither of them is really wrong in feeling the way that they do. It's just like, who do you side with when you love 2 people so much? And I haven't decided if they're going to be in a 3-way relationship yet or not. I'm kind of like going back and forth on it. We'll see. But like the main female character, she loves both of these guys a lot. Like, either in love, like relationship, or platonically for one of them. And it's like, who do you follow when you love both of these guys, and neither of them are really wrong in their ideology? So again, I don't really know how to classify it, because somebody said paranormal romance, and I'm like, I feel like that gives a different connotation, and so does fantasy romance. Like, I feel like that's neither of those really fit. So we'll see what happens with that one. But The Taming of Lazarus is also hopefully gonna come. I'm hoping to get it out by the end of the first quarter of 2027. And that one is a very male character forward book. And so like in Under Your Scars, a lot of the like trauma happens to Elena, the female character, But in The Taming of Lazarus, a lot of the trauma happens to the male character. And so that's been really, I don't want to say fun because that like discounts everything that he's going to, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just been very interesting as the author to like kind of explore, because I love writing complex male characters and I love writing from the male perspective in books. And so it's very interesting and very, very hard to write from the male perspective of a man who has been through a lot of trauma in his life, because like it's very hard to get men to talk about that kind of stuff. So it's kind of hard to find like actual like real life references for behavior like that. Like with Under Your Scars, like I could ask my husband all the live long day how he would react in certain situations. Like if I was in danger, like Elena was in danger, how would he react? But when you're talking about all this stuff happening to the male character and the female character does not know all of this is happening to him, how do you like develop his psyche? That's been very interesting, but I think that one was going to be like, I just have a feeling that that one's going to be very popular just because it's so male focused. And like, I mean, it is going to be dual point of view, but I feel like because it's so male focused heavy, that it's going to be like very interesting for readers and they're going to love going back to reading complex male characters that I have written. Yeah, I'm really excited for both of those. I really hope to get at least one of them out by the end of the year. I don't know if that's going to happen. And I do know that my agent, she has been saying that there are publishing houses that really want to look at my next dark romance, and I'm not 100% sure if I want to go the traditional route on it yet. So I'm kind of like debating on if I want to do that, because if I do that, then it's going to take longer to come out. So it's kind of what is best for the story and the situation. But we'll see when we get to the end of writing that what happens. But either way, those two books are probably going to be the next two that I publish. But I have so many works in progress, and I really like I write at least 5 books at a time, because if I get like writer's block on one, I just skip to a new one and then start writing in that one. So I always feel productive. So I have like 5 like partially finished manuscripts, and then I have like a million other like ideas or like a couple of scenes written manuscripts. So I have a lot in the works, all different genres, all different topics, all different tropes. So just be on the lookout, because like I said, I kind of just like to write what I like to write, and sometimes it's gonna surprise you, probably.
So would you say that's what you're most excited about in your career next, is finishing those?
Yeah, definitely. Because like I feel like now, like after I just published The End Unseen at the end of April, and I feel like after I published that book, I was like, okay, I know exactly how I like to write. I know what I like to write. I know what my strengths are as a writer, and I know what my weaknesses are as a writer. And now I can really hit it out of the park with these next 2 books. So I'm very excited to kind of get back to like people who really loved Under Your Scars, like whatever magic was in Under Your Scars, I'm really hoping to like inject that into these next 2 books, and hopefully like people really like them. But again, like I hate, like you can't compare the 2 things that aren't similar. So they're similar in the fact that they've been written by me, but not similar at all in story.
Okay, so we have a question that we ask every guest here on Obsessions After Dark. Now, this can be a book, a show, movie, even snacks, drinks, just anything that brings you joy. So what are you obsessed with after dark right now?
Oh my gosh. I am okay, first of all, everybody who knows me knows that I love Dr. Pepper. That is my thing. I love Dr. Pepper. I have 2 actually sitting right next to me. One's an old one. But I love Dr. Pepper, and I am just like obsessed with lemon hot Cheetos right now. I don't know what it is, but like that's just all I want all the time. You sprinkle a little lemon beer salt on them, they're amazing. And then as far as TV shows, it's an anime. It's called Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm actually wearing a shirt, and you can't see, but I'm wearing a shirt of them right now. And that's like my newest like hyperfixation. So that's kind of like, if I have any downtime, I'm probably drinking a Dr. Pepper, eating hot Cheetos, and watching Jujutsu Kaisen.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been such an awesome conversation, and we are so grateful for you taking your time out to come hang out with us and talk.
Yeah, I love doing podcasts, because you probably figured out that I love to yap, love to talk about So anytime I have a chance to do that, I'm happy to jump on board. And again, I love like interacting with people because like there's always like a couple of questions that everybody asks, but then like every podcast has like a different direction. And so it's like fun to like see what everybody's vibe is.
Yeah, we loved having you today. We were so excited. Cassie and I both were fangirling the whole week, excited to chat. So we're really grateful that you spent time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay, thank you for listening, everyone. Please subscribe, like, and share to support our channel. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you're an author or a narrator who would like to be a guest on our show, please reach out to us by email, which can be found on any of our Obsessions After Dark social media pages. And until next time, stay obsessed, and we'll see you after dark.